Welcome back, everybody. My name is Taylor Martin. This is the best Damn EDC, and today I want to talk to you about what were my favorite knives in 2021. That doesn't necessarily mean all new releases. It doesn't necessarily mean new to me. It's just the knives that found the most pocket time for me in this calendar year, and that I think were just really interesting or were very impactful for me. Just things that I was really stoked on. These are those knives in 2021. So with that said, let's do the damn thing. All right, so 10 knives on the table. These were the knives that easily got the most pocket time this year for me. There were obviously a lot more that I carried. I have a lot of knives in the collection, but these are ones that were mainstays, ones that once I got them, they stayed in the pocket. And there are some that I would say are probably a little too new to really say that about them. That would be true for like these three right here, because these two I acquired in the last 2 weeks. This one I got maybe a little over a month ago. So some of them are too new to say that I carried them the most this year, but if I had gotten them earlier in the year, I definitely would have. But let's start with, I think, what was the first acquisition for me in 2021, and that would be the Runt 5. So the ProTech Runt 5, it's something I've talked about a good bit this year because it was just, I think, a really impactful knife this year. It was a big release and a lot of people really jumped on this knife. And if you didn't, you should. Whenever they come back in stock, you definitely should if you were on the fence, because I think this is a tremendous little knife. It's really small but mighty, and I think this was one of my favorite knives to add to the collection this year. So got this one right before Blade Show, and then I got this one, the Wharncliffe OD Green. I still really don't know the details on this version of the Runt 5, but in whatever configuration you can get it in, I think you should try to grab a Runt 5. They run from anywhere like, I think, $140 for the aluminum handle versions, all the way to $1,400 and beyond for the custom hand engraved versions in bronze with a special Damascus blade. So lots of really cool stuff going on with the Runt 5. But for me, I think my favorite one for sure is this right here. I do wish that I had it without this mirror finish blade, because you're just constantly wiping it. I'm not a mirror finish kind of guy, but this is a very unique piece that's going to just stay in the collection. I think it's great, and I was happy to add it to my collection. So, Runt 5. So this is a Spyderco that I picked up in anticipation of the small knives video that I actually did recently. I bought this a long time ago. I was legitimately planning that video for 6 months plus, and even now, even having done that video, I feel like I could have done a better job. Maybe pared the list down more, maybe included some different knives. It's just, I struggled with it a whole lot because small knives there's an abundant amount of small knives, and picking just a few was tough. Clearly, I put 17 or 18 on my list, but this was one of the very first that I picked for that video myself, because there are smaller Spyderco knives and there are other knives that might have, fit the bill more. This is the one that spoke to me. One, yes, because it's OD green, but two, just the ergonomics, the shape, the size, all of that. What I would like to do with this is buy another one in H1, buy a Salt Dragonfly and blade swap, so that I can have the best of both worlds. Green with a corrosion resistant blade, and that would be like my saltwater fishing knife. But for now, I just have this one, which is VG10. That's totally fine. I'm not a steel snob by any means. But the Dragonfly is, I think, a really compelling knife because it's a lot of bang for your buck. It's a really good size and shape for just a very small, lightweight summer carry knife. And that's what this was for me. This knife I carried through, I'd say probably half the summer. I tell you guys what I'm carrying, but I don't tell you what I'm really carrying sometimes. Gotta keep some secrecy, gotta keep some allure to what I'm doing. So Dragonfly 2, these range from, I think, about $70 up to $150. This would be one of the more expensive versions in the G10, but I think it's just a really great small compact knife that packs a lot of punch. Dragonfly 2, I think it's one that most people should have in their collection. Knife that I picked up at Blade Show was something I wasn't expecting to get. One, because I knew that they were gonna disappear immediately, And two, I wasn't expecting to spend a whole lot of money at Blade Show. That was stupid of me. I did anyway. And then I did also end up getting a custom Enrique Pena Mula. A lot of people are like, no, that's the Caballero. It's not. It's not. I know people think it is, but this is the Mula because this right here, this little extended out jimping from the handle where the blade dips right there, not a Caballero feature. This is a Mula. It is smaller than most Pena Mulas, but it is a Mula, I promise. I don't have a certificate of authenticity on this because Enrique doesn't do them, but this was sold to me as a Mula. It was listed on the Blade HQ website, even though I'd already bought it. As a Mula, it's a Mula. It's not a Caballero. Anyway, this is my favorite Pena knife. If you like his X series and you really like his designs, I think you should work towards getting a custom from Enrique because his craftsmanship is excellent. Objectively, this is one of the best knives in my collection. The fit and finish, the action, everything about it. I love this knife. This knife is not leaving my collection probably ever. Enrique is one of my favorite knife designers. He is a killer dude, and this is one of my favorite designs that he's made. So, Enrique Pena Custom. I'm not telling you guys this because I think you're gonna go buy one. I think if you are a fan of Enrique's work and you like his X series, maybe consider trying to get one of these, but there's nothing I would change about this knife at all. And since we're on the topic of things I carried the most in 2021, we can't overlook the TPT Slide from Big Idea Design, who is the sponsor of today's video. The TPT Slide is a pocket-friendly titanium utility knife, and it's something I carried almost every single day this year. No joke. But Big Idea Design has lots of other titanium tools as well, like the Bit Bar Inline, a pocket screwdriver that stores bits in the handle and has a T and offset T handle configurations. They also specialize in making highly adaptable everyday pins that work with dozens of different refills like the Pocket Pro, TI Click EDC, and the newest, the Bolt Action, which is now available for purchase on their website. But my favorite pins from Big Idea Design are their line of much smaller pins like the Mini Pin, Mini Click, and the new Mini Bolt Action, which trade broad refill compatibility with extreme portability. To learn more about what Big Idea Design has to offer, click the link in the description and use coupon code CARRYON for 10% off your purchase to help support the show. This is one of my most recent acquisitions, mainly because Tactile Knife has started doing frequent drops. They drop new knives on Tuesday now, and I finally got a chance to grab a Rockwall. And I did not really want a flipper Rockwall. I wanted the thumb stud, so I waited, I held out, and I grabbed one of these in one of their first Tuesday drops. This is, to be fair, a 20 CV version. So what I'm ultimately hoping to do is hold on to this knife until I can get the same knife in Magna Cut, and then I'll sell the 20 CV version, because that's what I really want, is Magna Cut. And they weren't really selling Magna Cut when I bought this one. But if I'm gonna be completely honest, I was not interested in the Rockwall when it was first announced. I really wanted to support Will and the guys at Tactile Knife, but the design of the Rockwall did not really do much for me. It's plain Jane. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. You're gonna see that most of the knives I have here are pretty plain Jane. And it's something that I actually appreciate about, say, Chris Reeve knives. But the Rockwall design was a little too plain for me, and I didn't want yet another titanium liner lock flipper in my collection. And I held out. Thumb stud really kind of swayed me towards this knife. But after getting it in the hands, I'm glad I bought it. I really, truly like the Rockwall a lot. And they are dealing with some growing pains, as any new knife company will. They've got a little bit of QC stuff that they're ironing out. They're really working hard to iron out all of that and produce a really high quality knife. I don't think anybody really knows, other than the guys at Tactile Knife, how much work is going into it, but just having seen this project since before anybody knew about it, all the work and time and effort and money that's been going into Tactile Knife, it's really cool to see this knife come to life. And having an early model like this, just early in the terms of like, theoretically they should stick around for a while, having an early model in my collection is something that I wanted. So happy to support the boys, happy to get my hands on this, and I was really, really happy to genuinely be surprised by how much I like the knife. This one, the action on it is really good. It's one of those that you can just kind of push open when you're Spidey flicking it, and it flies open. The detent is perfectly tuned, perfectly centered, even grind. Like, this is a fantastic knife. So this right here is one of my favorite knives, period. And the reason for that is less about the knife and more about how it's constructed and all the materials that come into making this. And I like this knife so much that I bought a second one. It's on the way right now. I ended up buying the thumb stud. So version 2 of the Quiet Carry Drift comes with a thumb stud, not a thumb hole. And I think the reason for that is because the layout of this knife just makes it really tough to thumb flick. It's something that you can't do repeatably. I can thumb flick most of these knives over and over and over without failure. The drift, not so. So I think with a thumb stud, that's probably different, but I can Spidey flick it every time, no problem. So it's not really been an issue for me. And I prefer a thumb hole over a thumb stud. But going back to what I said, the reason that this knife is one of my favorites in the collection is that right there, Vanex steel. So it is a almost totally corrosion resistant knife. You have Vanex steel, all the hardware is titanium, so all your screws, you have phosphor bronze washers, and then your lock bar insert is actually LC200N. So this knife really, unless you try really, really, really hard, should not rust, which if you've been watching this channel for any time, you know that I rust everything. So that's why this was my backpacking knife. The first time I went backpacking, I took the Umnumzaan because this is a knife that I would just trust my life with. But I got surface rust on it because I was sweating for 3 days straight and it was in my pocket. So the second time around, I took the QC Drift because corrosion resistance. So there you go. That's really what this knife is all about, is corrosion resistance. This one is, I think, right at $300. They've been doing a few restocks lately. They've got G10 versions, but I got the same exact knife with a thumb stud just last week. So just for the record, I should not own any of these knives. I shouldn't. I told Matt of Wehr Knives, Matt Wehrwine, to not send these to me. And he said, I got you, bro. And I said, no, don't do it. And 3 of them arrived. So here I am, the owner of 3 Lukas-Ps. No, I will not sell you my Lukas-P because Matt is a good friend of mine and I really like the design and I don't mind having 3 of them in my collection, and I have a plan for some of these. So not selling it, just don't even DM me, even though like 50 of you already have. So I have the plain TI, OD green micarta inlay, and the natural micarta inlay. Plan for me, one of these is going to get swapped. I think I'm going to put the satin blade on the OD green and put the acid wash blade on the plain TI. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of Matt's designs. I really like his aesthetic and everything about this. I have a custom Lukas, which so many of you have been asking about what happened to that. Not ready to share the story just yet. It's still in my collection, but it needs to go back to Matt for a couple of things, but it's okay. I'll update you guys when I do my knife collection video, but for now, I now have a Lukas that I can carry and use, and I'm really happy to have these in the collection. So S35 VN, these are manufactured by Rayot, so you know the quality is just top tier. Action is absolutely great on every single one of these. Centering is perfect. These are just phenomenal knives. Fits my aesthetic perfectly. I really, really like these. So this is something that I haven't had a chance to carry a whole lot because they only got here maybe 2 weeks ago, if that. But the Wehr Lukas-P is gonna see a ton of pocket time. Just a killer knife. So one video that is definitely on the books for 2022, like early January, is going to be a video featuring TRM. Keep an eye out for that because there's also going to be some giveaways that go along with that video. But Three Rivers Manufacturing, you guys love them, and for good reason. They put out, I think, what is the best bang for buck knives, period. The TRM Atom, the Neutron, the Nerd, and the Shadow are all just top tier for what they are and made in America, and great prices for made in America. I mean, this knife is the most expensive that one they have, and I think it's like $270, which is a lot, don't get me wrong, but the Atom, the Neutron, those are in the 100s. I think they're like 180 and below. And for that, what you get for that, the quality, the fit and finish, the materials they use, everything, hot swappable scales, so good. Now, what I wasn't expecting was the Shadow to be in this video. Originally, I probably would have put the TRM Atom in this video, but the Shadow gets in this video because this is my favorite TRM. I saw it on their site and I'm like, that could be pretty cool. So I bought one, and holy crap, I really like this knife a lot. Like, I'm not a huge fan of axis lock knives just because historically I have corroded and broken the springs. So the verdict's still out on that. We'll see what happens in the summer when I carry this knife. But action is great. It's like the Benchmade that we want, but this thing has been perfected. Like, it's really good. Great action, but really I think my favorite thing about the Shadow is the blade shape and the way that this whole thing comes together. It has almost a cleaver blade, even though it's not. It's like a reverse Tonto blade, but the way that the blade kind of extends down and matches the handle. All the EDC cleavers out there, almost all of them are thumb studs or have really bad blade geometry, but this knife, it's just really good. I use this for food prep a lot because it's just a really good shape for that. It's almost got like a chef's knife shape to it, just with how wide the blade is and just the ergos of this whole thing. Sorry, I'm gushing right now, but I kind of was surprised by this knife as well, almost as much as the Rockwall, so the TRM Shadow. It's on the list. Just fidgety, great. The only thing that I would really change about this knife, only thing, is black G10 scales are boring. I don't care for them, and I would rather have, you guessed it, like OD green micarta or something a little more exotic than black G10. So I know that they're working on titanium scales and other stuff, but yeah, in its current form, the black G10 is just a little too dull for me, but it's something that's found its way into my pocket almost every day since I got it. I'd say about 75–80% of the time. So there you go, TRM Shadow. Next up, this is in the top 3 knives in my collection, period. This is the Shirogorov Neon Zero. I would say that this one is in contention for being the most carried this year, but I do believe it's been ousted by the Umnumzaan. But really, I think this is an almost perfect knife. Almost. I mean, it's the size, like for EDC, the size of this is perfect. Like, this is my favorite size for a knife, bar none. This is quintessential EDC. The action on this thing is absolutely perfect. I have many knives that run on bearings that after some time they need a little more lube, they need to be taken apart and cleaned or whatever. This knife, I've never taken it apart. I've never had to add oil or anything, not since I got it, and it's just still perfect. I did screw up the blade on it last year. I laid it back to 16 degrees and could never quite get it right. I spent some time on it a couple months ago, fixed the bevel. It is a laser beam now because it's still at 16, but I absolutely love this knife. Shirogorov Neon Zero. I think they originally were on about $750, somewhere in there. I paid $400, maybe $450 when I got this. I got it used. It had a little bit of the tip taken off, which is why I kind of laid the edge back a little bit. I wanted to fix it quickly. Bad mistake, but I love this knife so much I'd buy it again at full price without even hesitating. And the only thing that I'd do differently maybe is instead of getting a Neon Zero, I might get I think it's Neon NL, and they have different inlays on those, like OD green micarta and stuff. This would be one of my picks for top 3 knives in my collection, period. I love this thing so much, and because of that, it's gotten a lot of pocket time. However, we're gonna tackle these next 2 together because I am also a massive fan of Chris Reeve. I think if you are willing to spend $400 to $500 or beyond on a knife, you should own at least one Chris Reeve knife. I have the Inkosi, I have the Umnumzaan, I have the Mnandi, and I have a Sabinza, and I love them all. I think they are all fantastic. Just knives that you could trust your life with. Chris Reeve, that's where it is. I've said it a million times. If I could only have one folding knife or one knife period, it would be the Umnumzaan. It's a tank of a knife. I love the aesthetic of it. I love the ergos. You've got a few different grips on this because of the way that this blade is designed. The harpoon swedge up top. I love this knife. I would like to actually also have one in Tonto. I do not, obviously, just have the drop point. But the other is the Inkosi. I picked this up, I actually traded for it. I traded my small Sabinza 31 with a micarta inlay double lug for this one right here, which is a double lug Inkosi plain TI with a aftermarket finish on the handles. And I also really like this knife, but just holding it, using it, manipulating it, it does not feel as tough as the Umnumzaan. That's why the Zaan gets so much more praise for me. It's something that can't be described. When you hold them and feel them and just use them, you can tell that this is just a tougher knife, the Umnumzaan. That being said, I still really like the Inkosi. There's just something about each of them. This one has, I think, better ergos, right? You've got finger grooves on this one that give you a little bit of a better grip, whereas they're totally missing from this one. In fact, it's a little worse because you've got this lock bar that sticks out. So there are differences, and I think they serve different purposes, but I don't think you'd need to own both, right? You can pick one and be happy with it, because if I didn't have an Umnumzaan, I'd be totally happy with just having the Inkosi or just a Sabinda. Like, one Chris Reeve knife is enough, but I can't get enough, clearly. But yeah, one more time, just in case I haven't made it very clear, if I could only have one knife, period, it would be this right here, the Umnumzaan. And I do have one honorable mention, because I get asked so many times, what is the best knife under $100, just over and over and over and over. And the knife that I think so many people sleep on is the Ferrum forged Stinger. This knife is incredible. In fact, I would say that it is, there are obviously differences here, but I would say that it is very close to a budget-friendly Shirogorov. And I know that sounds silly, just like the words coming out of my mouth, but just looking at these two, you get similar shape, similar size, similar ergonomics. They're both flippers that run on bearings with pretty deep carry clips. This one's very deep carry. Just everything about them is very, very similar. The only thing that I think the Stinger has on the Shirogorov is that it's not just a flipper. You can still open it multiple different ways, whereas the Shirogorov is just a flipper knife. Obviously, this one's a titanium frame lock. This one is, I believe that's just a stainless steel liner lock, but for $90 or $700, it's hard to go wrong with the Ferrum forged Stinger. So this one's actually what was in my pocket today, because Nitro V, $90, great ergos, great size, very lightweight. Do not sleep on the Ferrum forged Stinger. It's something that I just don't think it gets enough praise. But that's it for now. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And until next time, carry on.